start working eventually anyways.
Yeah, well, I think there are enough chairs, but make sure that you have a place to sit so that you can work.
Okay. Like it sort of do catty corner back like this, maybe.
Somebody can,
They can go see through.
Somebody could sit right here and see.
Yeah.
all right. So in the meantime, just let me get this out of the way so
right.
that it's not.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to go through a lot of things here. Yeah. Are you ready now?
Yeah, I'm ready, I'm recording.
Okay. The first thing you want to do is make sure that you're on your sit bones if you're sitting. Now, one of the ways I find it convenient for people to get on their sit bones is to stay with your feet fairly wide and to just drop between the thighs, so that as you drop, the legs are going to open up. And then you might locate the sit bones with your fingers and unroll onto the sit bones, lengthening, but letting the head lead the spine into length, so that you are fairly clear. I'm going to first define the head for you, and then go through with a lot of other thoughts and definitions. Now, neck, all the way up to the ears. Neck is spine. Spine is torso, so neck is torso. Head is above the neck. The jaw is an appendage to the skull, and jaw is in front of the neck. When you free the neck, or you direct your neck to be free, you are giving up the muscular tensions that compress the cervical spine, the tensions that pull that head down onto the neck and primarily back and down. What happens then is that when you give up those tensions, the neck will lengthen, will release into length, and the head will be able to come forward from the base of the skull, forward of the neck and up. The jaw, being an appendage to the skull, is going to go forward and up with the skull, with the head. Well, this is the basic head direction as we understand it. Now, what you can do is bring your neck, sending your head forward and up, releasing into length and width. Using your hands, you can begin to tell yourself the same thing that my hands say to you. So that now, if you start the fingers, you move the fingers to move the hand, to move the arm, to bring the hand to the head and neck. And what you are putting your hands on is an air bubble, so that they can't be tight hands. You'll break that air bubble. They're just there, and they are feeling what's going on. If you push your head down, you might feel that at the base of the skull. If you put your chin down, you'll feel it. The thumbs that are in front. You have one thumb on the neck and one thumb under the chin. I didn't say that before. Now, the thumb on the neck is telling the neck that it can let go release into length back into these fingers that are at the back of the neck. The head at the same time, then, instead of pressing back and down, can very gently come forward of the neck and up. And it's up because you're sending your head up. And then take your hands down. You don't want to keep them there too long. I'm going to go through this again because we have a lot of time to work on this. Neck free, head forward and up, because this is what we're dealing with. The basic directions of the Alexander technique. The neck to be free, the head to go forward and up, the torso to lengthen, and the torso to widen. You want to keep that going, that thought going. And what you want is your hands to translate that thought into a kinesthetic experience, if possible. Now, you're seeing that face in the mirror. You're going to lead with the fingers to move the hand, to move the arm, and see that face so that you don't change anything as you just gently bring the hand up. At the back of the neck, the base of the skull. Very gently move the fingers to move the hand, to move the arm and the joint that's in the scapula. And now you'll have one thumb under the chin, one thumb on the neck, the fingers meeting in the back of the neck and the base of the skull. And you feel what's going on. You might feel, if you're pressing down and back, you're pushing down in front. And if you feel that, you're going to tell yourself, I'm going to let go of the tensions. I'm going to free my neck so that the neck can release into length. I'm letting go of the tensions that are pulling that head down onto the neck. The head then can come forward of the neck and up. And now see that happening on that image in the mirror. And you bring your hands down. All right, now, I don't know if you noticed that when you brought your hands down, you pulled your head back a little bit. You shorten at the base of the skull. So you begin to see what's going on in the mirror. You take note of that, and you begin to recognize in that mirror image what you want to have happen. If you get tired of sitting any length of time, you can always rock backwards and forwards by your hip joint, because it gets to be a little difficult sitting all of this time. Now, what I've given you is an external definition and a way of checking out on yourself. And what I want to do now is to give you an internal definition. The same thing is going, same thoughts. You lead with the hand, or right now what you're going to lead with is a finger, because you're going to bring the finger to the Adam's apple. You're going to lead with the fingers to move the hand, to move the arm, the joint that's in the scapula, lengthening and widening, finger leading the hand to lead the arm, and you're going to put this finger in the little hollow at the base of the skull. A finger, doesn't matter which finger it is. It's a finger. Yeah. All right, now, if you think of digging the finger that's under the chin up to the level of the nose, behind the jaw. Everything in the back of that finger is neck, is spine, is torso. It's the same level as the finger at the base of the skull, the same level as the ears. Everything above that finger, the level of the nose, is head. Everything in front of that finger, the level of the nose, is jaw. So that now, internally, all the way up to the level of the nose, when you free the neck, that neck that's behind your finger, the level of the nose, so the front part of the neck is also free. It's letting go back. Everything in front of that finger is jaw. Jaw is head. Head is forward. Jaw is forward, straight into the mirror. That's inside. So you're getting an internal space. Everything above that finger is head. That head is going right up off the end of the spine. And there you're doing it, getting it internally also. Did you recognize that? Is that why you started to smile?
I'm not sure why I smiled. It was a strange sensation.
Oh, what was the sensation?
It was
You can't
disorienting.
define
I
it.
can't tell.
Okay. Forward and up. Torso lengthening and widening. And widening. Knees forward, shoulders out. So all the basic directions are there. You're thinking them, and you're going to continue to think them as, again, you bring a finger, you lead with the finger, the hand leads, the arm follows, and you bring a finger up under the chin there. Adam's apple. Free your neck. Send your head forward and up. Release into length and width. And now we have that finger right there in the little hollow at the base of the skull. And we're going to go through the same definitions. So that, again, thinking that finger digging up under the chin to the level of the nose, everything in back of that finger, the level of the nose, is neck, is spine, is torso, is the back wall of your oral cavity. Everything in front of that finger to the level of the nose is jaw, is an appendage to the skull, is head, is the front wall of the oral cavity. Everything above that finger, the level of the nose, is head. It's moving off the end of the spine. It's the roof of the oral cavity. Now, if the neck is going back, the jaw is going forward, the head's going up, what you have inside of you is expanding space and expanding oral cavity. That oral cavity goes down into the lungs. It's the channel through which air is drawn in and expelled. And what you have then still is expanding space that is the channel for the air. You don't need it to breathe, except that it's a channel. If you had a hole here going into the lungs, the air would be drawn in and expelled. What makes for the breathing is the combined activity of the diaphragm and the intercostals of the ribs. Your job then is not to close off your oral cavity, just as a thought, to keep it open, which is a pure image of this expanding space. Thank you, Cynthia. I'll get back to you, Sarah. All right. Now we're going to come back to our other hand, because right now we're going to take this into another aspect here. So you bring your fingers, now don't prepare, just be easy. You're going to start with the fingers, but you're just thinking about this, you're not doing anything about it. You start with the fingers, you move the fingers, to move the hand, to move the arm, to bring the hand to the back of the neck, the base of the skull. And you're going to see this in the mirror, and you're going to feel what's happening at the base of the skull as you inhale, exhale. All right, now see it in the mirror, though, so that what you're feeling is not, because just focusing on that one spot, but you're with neck free, head forward and up, torso lengthening and widening, and beginning to feel with your fingers as you inhale, exhale. And you want to feel absolutely nothing at the base of the skull there. That is, you don't want to feel any shortening under your hands as the air is drawn in and expelled. And that time you might have felt that it tightened. You did there. Yeah. You might have also seen it in the mirror, that there was a slight pulling back. All right, because I think what happened is that you were taking in a little more air. All right. What you want is to recognize that you don't pull back. All right. And just focus on that. And what you're doing then is inhibiting, withholding consent on the inhalation or the exhalation from compressing at the base of the skull, pushing that head down. And when your hand gets tired, you just take it down. Because, torso lengthening and widening. And we're still focusing on neck free, head forward and up, torso lengthening and widening, which is a constant pattern. And let's bring this hand up. And now, and you want to really be with the base of the skull, because that's where you'll feel the most. Now, look at your eyes, and what you're going to do, thinking of the jaw suspended from the skull as opening and closing, and you're going to then, tip of the tongue behind the lower teeth, you're going to open and close. Now, all of you, when you're doing this, look in the mirror, because you want to maintain the eye level, and you want to let that jaw just move easily. And while you're doing that, you're still thinking of that expanding oral cavity or the expanding internal space. So that as you open and close your mouth, you're not pushing that jaw right into or onto those series of cartilages there that we call the Adam's apple, which is where the larynx is and where, if you press down, you're going to close at that opening. Yeah. You can experiment and you can feel that. You might feel that compression or the constriction. Right. Now, neck free. Widening, and I'm going to just rock you a little bit here so that you don't get fixed or rigid. And we're going to now take this into making a sound, which is very difficult because there's a self-consciousness suddenly about vocalizing. Neck free, head forward and up, torso lengthening and widening. And again, you're going to bring your hand to the back of the neck and the base of the skull, the thumb in front. All right? Now, neck free, head forward and up, torso lengthening and widening, knees forward, shoulders out. It's all going on. And you're thinking of that expanding internal space, that expanding oral cavity that goes down into the lungs. You're going to stay with that. You're going to open your mouth and let the sound out on an ah. All right, and then again. Now, I don't know if you felt yourself, but you tightened at the base of the skull. So you stop and you say, well, I don't have to, so that you don't make the sound until you've opened your mouth without any pressure, any shortening at the base of the skull. And whenever you're ready, then, and you're still thinking of that expanding internal space. And when you've used up the air, you let the air drop in so that you want to feel if, as the air comes in, whether you're pressing down. And if you feel that pressure down, you're going to begin to inhibit that. As you open your mouth, make a sound. As you, that's a nice sound. And the air is coming in, and then again you're going to continue with that. And the next step is to say a word. So that instead of just a vowel, yes, all right, neck free, head forward and up, torso lengthening and widening. And you're with the internal expansion as you open the mouth and say an ah first. Now, did you feel yourself when you said the ah that you shortened back there? All right. It was very slight. All right. And that breath you also pulled back.
Oh my goodness.
That's short.
Voices dropped.
All right. And when you let the air drop in, you don't have to take a breath. The air will just come in, beautiful, and say a word. All right, the next time you're going to say a word. All right. Let me, you see, what we've done was a progression here. And every time you added a step, everything that you've done before is part of the next step. That you have to go through the whole thing. So that before you become very complicated, like saying words, you've been able to open your mouth and get the sound out on an open vowel like the ah, which is a very open vowel sound. It's an open throat. And then you're going to say a word. And each time recognizing with yourself that as you add the next step, does that make you tighten? And I think it's something that you might discover in other learning situations, that the easy thing you can manage, but every time you get into the next more difficult step, do you tighten? Do you compress? Do you press down to add on that step? If you recognize that, you can also inhibit it. But you can't stop what you don't know. So it's a question of recognizing what it is that you do and finding a way of changing, making a choice, and then carrying out the choice. So, I think that everybody needs to move a little bit. You can get up, you can walk around, because we're going to continue with this.
Judy, I had a question while we were working. I started yawning.
Yeah.
And I was trying to, maintain this cavity and everything when I yawn.
Yeah.
Is it a function of yawning that there really does, the vocal, really presses down here? I mean, I couldn't, either I wasn't able to, or it's not possible
I
to
don't
keep that
know.
from pressing
I
down.
honestly don't know about that. But I think that one can experiment if one goes through a spell of yawning. Do you have any understanding of that, Cynthia?
Not really, no.
Because when
Yes.
I yawn, even if I'm thinking, there's this pressure against the trunk. I mean, that's kind of where the yawn happens. It's an expansion or pressure down here. Unless I'm yawning wrong.
Well,
But I mean, that's how I yawn in either case.
I think that if we're focusing on not pressing at the base of the skull,
Uh-huh.
because yeah,
What are you saying, that you press here?
No, Judy was talking about keeping this
Yeah.
area open.
yeah,
And even as when I yawn, keeping the fingers, trying to keep the base of the skull free and everything.
yeah.
This really comes forward and presses. She said that the vocal
Vocal
cords
cords,
kind of expand and press.
Yeah, no, I feel
at
that
least
there's
out
an
and maybe
expansion
down.
rather
Yeah.
than, I mean, it's different if it's pressing forward from the back,
Mhm.
but this is pressing forward from...
from the front.
So
That's
you
that whole
you
opening.
lose that spaciousness in there because this is coming something like that.
I don't know, it seems more spacious, actually.
I think that maybe because it's like a hollow tube, it's like a hose that's expanding front and back, so that it's an internal expansion.
Really much
Get
bigger.
everybody going.
Well, I think it's something to experiment with. It's fun anyway.
Just then, it seemed like you pulled it
Pull it
down
down.
into a little bit, rather than just like dropping.
See, I mean, it's very difficult because when you open your mouth, the jaw does drop back. But what you don't want to do is to drop it back onto the neck. So that you want that space there.
What's interesting is I tried to give into a yawn, but let it yawn itself rather than
Yeah.
trying to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't mean to stop people from walking.
But I think that was a very interesting question. I think we all got something out of that. And
I'll keep an eye on it.
yeah,
I'll make the yawn report.
I think yes, I think it would be interesting. Does anybody else have any comments? Anything they'd like to ask? Okay, well, there are no questions. We're ready to go back to work again. Yeah, like the whole thing. Are you ready?
Same thing as
Yeah.
stretching on it like this.
Multiple times at once.
Yeah.
Short.
All right, because if I come to you, then I'm out of the, but you feel that you're getting, so Cynthia, you'll take care of Kathy also. Thank you.
Because it's released because you're not doing something else most of the time, or that you should do the thing without that. Who knows? I think it's something to watch and experiment.
I think a lot of what we're doing is, in a sense, it's experimental for yourself. I mean, it's checking yourselves out. And what I want to get onto now, and we're going to get onto some more voice work, but not just yet. Because the head is sitting on the end of the spine. The head can move. You want to be able to make these movements, and as you move the head, you don't want to compress the spine. Now, imagine that you have a rod running through your ears, in this ear, out that ear. It's like the rod on a hinge. By the way, did everybody come back onto their sit bones when you sat down? Make sure. So you have that head that's on a rod that's running through the ears. As I said, it's like a rod on a hinge. Whatever movements that you're making with the head, that rod is an imaginary, artificial barrier that prevents you from pressing that head down onto the spine. So that if you want to, say, look up at the ceiling, and you have that rod coming through the ears, what you're going to have to do is lift that head up over that rod, which means that as that head comes up over that rod, all of the musculature in front has to lengthen to give you that space, so that what you have is that head moving up over the end of the spine. If you wanted to look down, you're coming up over the end of the spine. So what you have, the head that maybe moves a little differently as you come up and down. And I think what I'm going to have to do is go through the whole room and help each of you to experience this. Because if you look at this in the mirror, I think that Vince, your head is a little differently poised here, and you look a little more up. All right, now, you see that?
Yes.
Good. All right, now you still have that rod that's running through the ears, huh? What we're going to do is take that rod and turn you left and right, up and down, all of that, and we can even make a circle. Now with all of these movements, you're off the end of the spine. I don't know if you can check it out putting your hands on, but you might experiment with that. But let me just first take you into this. All right, now, freeing your neck, sending your head forward and up, releasing into length and width, and it's forward from the base of the skull and up. So we're getting away from any of that tendency. Now head forward and up, and you have that rod that's running through your ears. That's an image. And all of you can experiment with this until I come to you. Now, and if you put your finger in the little hollow at the base of the skull, and as you lift, and you might, because there are no muscles in the nose that can do it, you might think of the nose as lifting up over. If you have your finger at the base of the skull there, as you come up, you don't want to feel your finger, you don't want to feel my finger anymore, Sheldon, than what you're feeling. It we get you up so that the movement maybe is a little higher than you think. Again, that's a different, and we just take you, that rod. All right, and as you move, you don't want to press down here. So we're going to. So again, I think you might use your fingers in your hands to feel what's going on in you. That you would feel pressure here if, as you turn the head, you're pulling down. So experiment. don't want to feel my finger anymore as we pick you up. And you're going to feel maybe all the musculature in front because it's a powerful stretch up the front, particularly under the chin. Now we're going to lift you right now. It's got to come off my finger, which means that as it comes back, all of this musculature in front has to... There we are. I think one of the reasons I have to give you the experience is that I think most people don't realize how little they're going to feel at the base of the skull. Sorry. Now, I don't know if any of you have noticed how much focus I put on separating jaw from neck. Not by jutting the jaw forward, which shortens you at the base of the skull, but by, with my fingers, indicating that neck and jaw anatomically are separate. That anatomically, jaw is head and neck is torso. Torso's lengthening and widening, neck being torso, is lengthening and widening, it's back and up. Head from the base of the skull forward of the neck, from the back there. Jaw being head is forward, up with the up of that head, so that what you're getting then is that space. And that is that internal space that I was talking about. And you continue that image of that expanding internal space as we turn the head or lift it up over the end of the spine or roll the head. And that's important because all of you are going to be probably doing a lot of work with actors, singers, with musicians who need to use their voices. So, now, neck free, hip forward and up. It's also important for other people to have this kind of freedom in the head and be able to use their voices differently. It's also for you Alexander teachers, future Alexander teachers, because you're going to have to be doing a lot of talking. So, and what you can't do is relax the muscles, because then suddenly you have nothing to support the weight of the head. So it's due tension. We're going to lift that head up over the end of the spine. the end of the spine. Now, so that's my finger. You're not going to feel any more than what you're feeling it at the moment. Coming up. Now you're lengthening and widening, and you have to allow all of that musculature in front to stretch, and that's pushing down on my finger, all right? And I think that your eyes got lost on this also. You stopped seeing it. I think that maybe you were just trying to feel it instead of thinking it and feeling it. So it's all going on at the same time. All right, now, your thought is that you're lifting over a rod that's running through your ears. You're coming up over the end of the spine, coming up. Now, you don't want to feel my finger anymore here. All of this musculature in front has to lengthen. You have to allow it to release into length to help you to come up, and you might feel a powerful stretch. And now you're coming up over the end of the spine, all right, and seeing eyes, and not a relaxed jaw. You're going to hold your mouth closed. In other words, you're not going to just let it go, all right? You're going to stay with head moving off the end of the spine. That's it. There we are. Got to stretch it back so that all those muscles have to give you the means to make this movement by either taking over and shortening and making the movement, or releasing into length so that the reverse can take place. So you can't hold on to a position. You have to allow movement to happen by just allowing those muscles to do their job. And that's very different if you look at that. We're going to take that. There we are. And that's where you're focusing, not shortening back there, releasing at the base of the skull, letting go of the tensions that pull the head down onto the neck. But it's not relaxed muscles, because then your head has no support. The muscles are there, they're in tone, they're supporting you. And free and fall up, torso
What
length.
would happen if you just relax and let your head fall?
Probably you
Fall forward?
if you relaxed all the muscles, the head might just fall down completely. That if you were to relax all the muscles in your body, you'd end up on the floor. You couldn't sit here. So that I think that it's a question of using muscles properly in a balanced way to deal with the particular activity that you're involved in. All right, now, neck and jaw. They're separate from each other. Up, head forward and up, and you have a rod running through your ears, going to lift you up over, now wait a minute, because you're still with my finger, and you're not going to feel it any more than what you're feeling it, so that you have to allow all those muscles up the front, that's nice, to stretch, to release into length, to get even longer so we can take you all the way up, to come up over the end of the spine. So whatever movement you're involved in, that's nice. You're not pressing down and compressing the spine. lovely, easy, loose.
So, elbow conversation. Elbow conversation.
I think that we don't realize how high up that head moves. Can we get you here, Kathy? Oh, you focus. All right, now, bring your neck, sending your head forward and up, releasing into the width. Now, you feel my finger, and you have that rod that you're running through your ears. It's coming up over the end of the spine. Thinking maybe of picking the nose up, to pick that head up, to lift over the end of the spine. And you're coming up over the end of the spine to look down, so that that head moves very high up. And we're going to take that same rod and we're just making a circle, so that that head is really very far up off the end of the spine. And I think that that there's a freedom that everybody has shown through the neck-jaw area as you've made this movement, so that it's something that you might want to do on your own. You freeing your neck, send it now, stay in the mirror, so you're not going to get lost in the feeling. And we're going to take you up over a rod that's running through your ears. It means all the muscles in front, they have to release into length or stretch, because that's longer than when you're taking that head there. The muscles in back have to get long as you come the other way. What you have to do is allow the variations to take place. And the thing that you have to know is that if you get out of your own way, the muscles know what to do. But mostly we have to get out of our own way. But the muscles will know what to do if you program them or tell them what you want to have happen, which is to have that head move off the end of the spine, so that whatever movement you're involved in, you're not pressing down, compressing.
Quite interesting, because as you worked with him before, there was a certain amount of tension here in the chest. And now
yeah.
the chest is very loose.
Yes.
I don't know if you're aware of it, but there's quite a change in the musculature here.
Well, yeah, I noticed a change with everybody, that there was a whole different relationship of the head on the neck also in this. I think that we tend to get so fixed in the right Alexander, let's put it in quotes, position,
Yes.
which is just as fixing as our old misuse. So that it's a thing that, you know, it's all loose and easy, poised, balanced. I want to continue with this. I think we need a bit of a break again. So, as you break, whatever, some of you have gotten up and have moved. I would like if there's anybody who has anything to say. That was a very interesting observation that you made, Sam. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say on this? Did anybody have a particular experience that they'd like to mention?
Well, I'd like to say that I'm becoming more aware of my tendency to do this.
Yeah.
And it has to do, of course, with the uneven balance of
Yes.
the musculature on both sides. So I'm becoming more aware of permitting this area to release more
Yes.
so that the head is balanced more easily and symmetrically.
Yeah. I think it comes back to what we always say is that you can't change what you don't know. You can't, and even just going ahead and giving these directions, and it's fine. But specifically, you have to come at conditions, problems that you are working with, and you recognize them and say, well, I mean, I have to go beyond just neck free, head forward and up. I have to specifically say something to this particular situation that I have to change. So it's a growing awareness, and you have to start out first by knowing as much as you can, ideally, what the objectives are. We don't have any ultimate ideal, we just know along the way that we can go a little further. But you have to know that so that you can measure yourself against that, let's put it in quotes, ideal. And what you want then is to find a way of working through your own conditions to get to that ideal, which may then, you might find that there's something much more that you want to add on. That it's a growing awareness of the ideal, or that the ideal is never ultimately there, but it just leads you on to the next step. Anything else that anybody wants to say? Okay, let's stop it for the time. We can, because what I want to do is, and I think let's do it standing this time, just for the difference. And you don't have to be in the same places that you were before. And now, you're still going to be using the mirror, so that you might want the chairs out of the way. Now, this is, you can start out with a repetition of everything that we have gone through earlier. The only difference now is that you're standing. And you want to be aware that you're grounded. Standing, you might notice in the mirror your central axis, spine, that's moving, and if you can think of it as extending straight up through the top of that head, and the head is centered on that axis. Now, you free your neck, send your head forward and up, torso lengthening and widening. And you can, starting with the hand, bring the hand to the head, neck, and what I would say here is that you're establishing head. Head on the spine, or primary control. Neck free, head forward and up, torso lengthening and widening, and you bring the hands. Right? So you have the head forward and up, torso lengthening and widening, knees forward. It's all easy. The thumb on the neck is telling the neck that it can let go. Back into the fingers at the back of the neck. The neck will lengthen as it lets go, releases into length. The head at the same time releasing forward of the neck and up. The jaw's head. So if the head moves up, the jaw's got to go with it. The thumb under the chin will tell you that. And you can take your hand down. Now that was beautiful. You got that really going there. So that having established head, you want to go on to the next thing, which is to begin to think of this in terms of staying with the head, opening, closing the mouth, neck free, head forward and up, and you float the fingers to float the hand, to float the arm right up, feeling again, and you're also dealing with that internal expanding space that we spoke about earlier, so that internally neck and jaw are separating. No, we don't want that one, sorry. And head forward and up, and that internal expanding space goes down into the lungs. It's the channel through which air is drawn in and expelled, and you bring the other hand into the small of the back. Now, you're staying with the head, and you're recognizing what's going on in the small of the back, and if you feel that you're pushing into the waist, the back, you're just telling yourself, I'm going to release into length and width. Head right up, and now you're feeling, and you're not going to press down at the base of the skull, and you're not pressing down on the hand and the back. Instead, your neck is free, your head is forward and up, you're lengthening and widening, and you're thinking the breath dropping into the lower back lobes of the lungs, or dropping into the area where your hand is. And you're staying with that. When your hands get tired, you just bring them down and then bring them up again. So just take them. Forward and up. Torso lengthening and widening. Knees forward. And as you're standing and you're thinking knees forward, you know that you don't have tight knees, don't have bent knees, you have free knees. Sure. Neck free, head forward and up. Lengthening, widening, knees forward, shoulder out. Let's get this hand there. All right. And the other hand, head, neck free, head forward and up. Now you're, with everything that we went through earlier today, and you're adding on, because you're not feeling anything as you're breathing now, that you're going to open your mouth and let the sound out on an ah. And you're thinking ahead, the air is going to, when it comes in, drop into the back here. You're going to feel it on, yeah, so you've got the back there working for you, don't you? Because what you're doing is continuing to lengthen and widen. And when you lengthen and widen the torso, you're filling up on the back. You're making that whole back available for the breath. Now, on the exhalation, the ribs are contracting with the relaxing diaphragm. Then, with the contracting diaphragm, the ribs pull apart, the air will just drop in. All right, now, be a little more daring with your sound. With the length up past the clavicles. Here we are. That's it. So that as the length was a constant even as you came in. Then take your hands down because it's hard to keep them up like that for any length of time. Now we're getting some nice sounds in here, aren't we? So again, what you're doing is tying in this with what's happening in the lower back lobes or the middle back, lower back lobes of the lungs. In other words, by continuing to lengthen and widen, and when you're lengthening and widening, you're preventing the narrowing, you're preventing these lower ribs from compressing forward, which will cut off the breath. It'll cut off the availability for those lower back lobes to fill. You bring the hand to the head, neck, and this can come, the thumb can be a little more forward. And as you bring the hand up, as you bring the other hand into the small of the back, you're staying with the lengthening and widening, which means that you're preventing those lower ribs from coming forward. So that within the lengthening and widening torso, breathing and speech happen to take place. And again, you're going to free your neck, sending that head forward and up, releasing into length and width. You're going to open your mouth and you feel yourself pressing down when you open your mouth. You did. All right, so let's not get the sound out, so you'll do it again.
It's one nerve there anyways, yeah.
All right, you can bring it up. So that's much better. I think it's a different
It's carried away by the sound.
So you still have that going. And then we can But if your hand wasn't there, you might not have noticed it. All right, now that I'm hurt, you also. But again, it's a question of recognizing and then making a choice. I mean, you might choose to do it, I don't know. But if that is not your choice, then you say, well, I really don't want to shorten the base of the skull. I will not do that. Instead, I will. Because having said no, you must say yes. And the yes is the opposite. You're freeing your neck, sending your head forward and up, lengthening and widening. And the no is inhibiting or saying no to your habit.
Think of a bright idea. Think of a cheery, bright idea. Right. Good. Now it's sort of off a little bit back here when you did that because if you were right.
Is that different? And this time, you see, we're adding on the next step, which is you're going to say words. All right, well, whatever. But before you do that, you're getting everything else. So you're freeing your neck, sending your head forward and up, releasing into length and width, knees forward, shoulders out, it's all there. And within this totality, you're going to allow the breath to happen. So you don't take a breath, it's just there. You're freeing your neck, sending your head forward and up, lengthening and widening, and you're going to open and close. That's it. All right? And you're opening and you're going to tell me something. Talk to me.
Talk to me.
Tell me what you're thinking about all of this. You're very self-conscious about speaking. All right. All right, so let's just do the All right, but at least it's oh, you just feel yourself pressed down there. All right.
629 K-Pop Street, that's with a K-A-double.
And the air is going to come in here. Oh, lovely. All right, and the next time you're going to put, yeah, you're going to put a V in front of the now, well, you can feel yourself as you took that breath. All right. There we are. I can hear the difference in your voice. But make it a lot. And put the V at the end. Yes, yeah. All right, so play with that. Yes. But it is very hard, you know, because the voice is who you are, it's your self-image, and it's very hard. And
It's like, I'm scared that it's going to drop.
Yes. Also, I think that it's going to be a different quality voice. That might be difficult. Let's see. Now you're not pressing back anywhere, but you're also this thumb here is saying neck back, but that forward part is saying jaw forward. So you're getting space, all right? And Cynthia brought up a point that is very important, is that if you think something bright and cheery, so that there's a tendency maybe to smile, and then you just talk to me a little bit, say. All right, yeah, all right. Now do that I again. And the air, when it comes in, is going to come into the back here, and you're going to let the air down into the back. There we are. All right. You're letting that air drop in. All right. Go on. Now you pull back there. All right, now with that same voice, tell me about your trip. All right. Now, what you want to recognize is that open quality of that and as soon as one starts to talk, one's voice takes over, because one's voice is who one is. All right. So what you want is that same quality, and also staying with the breath dropping into the back. We have as soon as you were ready to make the sound, it's as though you had it.
Sounds like gargling. Then you go back to that.
It's supposed to yawn.
Yeah. All right, go ahead.
Remind yourself of what neck is. Try not to nod because he's usually that, but there's this back here. That's right.
All right, now, see if you can just make that a little longer.
Now that's a more supple back here. It's a nice.
And you're thinking ahead, the air is going to just drop into your back. Because you're not narrowing. Stay on this lengthening, winding torso. All right, so you can begin to see the breath coming into the back there, or feel it. You might not have seen it. All right, then you just experiment. And each time you add on something else, you're dealing with everything that's happened before. And each time and particularly when you start talking, because that's very personal, that's who you are, your self-image in a way. The tendency is then maybe to pull back a little more, to tighten, and recognizing the quality of that and then taking that quality into the speaking voice instead of changing.
Sure, it's very devious, especially in terms of how we're talking. I would think it's part of something important or teaching or emotional context that we.
Oh, of course, but you're saying what you're doing is breaking into a habit of sorts. See, that happens very early. All right, so you're with Sarah, I'm with... Okay. Can you... Oh, I didn't mean to take you over.
No, we were actually done.
Oh, okay. Let me say something to everybody here, because when you are working vocally, you're also dealing with your self-image. We are how we sound, we are how we walk. These are very difficult aspects of ourselves to recognize and to deal with. So that when you get a nice ah sound and you start saying words, do you change the voice? Or is it the same voice? And what you want is to then begin to hear what's coming out of you. So you're adding on another dimension. So just a thought, neck free, head forward and up. And the mirror, again, is very important because it helps to maybe be less subjective and more objective about this. So it's that image that you're dealing with, that head that's going forward and up, that torso in the mirror that's lengthening and widening, and that hand in the mirror that has come to your head, that hand in the mirror that's come into the lower back. And you're freeing your neck, sending your head forward and up, releasing into length and width, knees forward, shoulders out, and you're going to just open your mouth and let that ah come out.
It's still engaging, so.
All right. Now, why don't you let that ah come out on the mirror so the mirror can hear it. Now, you don't have to tighten here to get it out. And the air is going to drop into the back here. That's nice. And again, you're going to... Now you're still lengthening up past the clavicle, so it's three-dimensional. The ribs opening up wide to get that air. That's nice. And talk to me. And you can see how immediately the voice goes back to Joel's voice. But this is, but now it's different. Then you went back. That's the problem. You went back to that open us sound.
It's not like I suppose my partner. Sometimes feels
the air's going to drop into the back here. Zip, shoulders out, and see it in the mirror. Oh, that's not sharp.
So I lost my sweatshirt yesterday, but when I got here today, it was still there.
Oh, she left it here.
Yeah, I left it here. I got it when I left.
Is this different?
Trying to do something.
Yeah, it is.
The way something feels. It is. Sometimes it is. I come back.
Sarah, let's get you here.
Lots of No. I'm not. Names and we all. Your call is six.
Carla, I didn't do you, did I? Oh.
But I'm as beautiful as ever. My voice is as resonant as it always
You cannot relax there. But they gotta be energized and alive.
You're going to be shelly out. You're going to be shelly out.
And when you bring the arm up, you stand with the widening, so that the lower ribs
Well, it's just
back and up.
it reminds me
There.
if you can make that happen, and you can let it kind of be like a shape or back.
Stay with that.
into your back.
And we should going to the jaw. And you can really open your mouth, can't you? Yes. Nothing's happening in the back there, you just open it. That's nice. Right?
How about,
Wait a minute. You were deciding to take the face down.
get out of here, folks.
You're going to make that, I think that breath when it comes in is going to come in. That's nice. Again. Can you talk to me? Oh, wait a second, it's starting getting better. Reach down and talk to me. Still going up. You think what? What you're getting is a breath support for the voice that we don't have ordinarily. Carla, let's get you here. After a while, it stops being self-conscious.
Huh? No, I know that that's what he must have thought.
We're going now.
From it. But I know what
If you want to feel what happens here, bring the hand up. There's nothing.
I figured I knew exactly
Press
what you were
down.
going
All right.
It's so astonishing. But if you could hear it,
The jaw of his head is going up with the up of that leg.
Vocalization.
Your back is up.
So you can have a chance to let it bring it around.
Oh, beautiful. That's not Carla's voice. There we are. Talk to me. Much easier.
And I gotta win.
Okay.
Yeah, right. A little bit more on that. Begins to the muscles of the face.
Well, that's when I like it, when it breaks into singing. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say on this now? Before?
In what voice?
Oh, haven't been working specifically on myself, but I don't know if any of you have noticed that my voice has become progressively more open and free, because I'm thinking of all of these things for you. I'm also thinking them for myself, and it's working for me also. So that
Talk to me.
I'm talking, Sam.
I don't understand why your Juilliard people don't like the or the whispered part. It's a little baffling to me because.
So the voice people say that the whisper is not good for the voice. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I know
So
there's
I-
an Alexander person in the West Coast who's a voice and speech person.
That's what's her name, Carol
Yeah.
Gill, and she
She
uses it. Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, if you don't give your chance to be a little softer with it, and if to go straight to a, I mean, you're not doing that, but it's just harder, I don't know.
I think if you're whispering with apparently bad use, it is
bad for
hard on the voice.
Yeah.
So you can try whispering and compressing and then see what happens when it changes. So maybe that's what voice people are saying.
Well, I don't know, you say, but all I'm saying is that because of that, I just get on, but also because I do this mostly with voice people who can open their mouth and get a sound out anyway.
I have a question about whispering.
Yes.
If you let the breath out with the channel still open, you won't get any resistance, you won't get any sound at all. If you try to make a whispering sound, aren't you constricting the throat in order to make the, in order to aspirate?
Mm-hmm.
So there's constriction going on there.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that a sort of tricky thing to play with?
Yeah. Maybe that's what they're talking about, the voice people. So I'm just dealing with this, giving this, what I've worked out, some way that helps them in getting a clearer, freer, open sound, without compression. And I don't, I'm not one way or the other about it. I'm just trying to get that freedom and that internal expansion, which is a pure image. And so that it seems to me that if one were to use a whisper, it would have to be a very open whisper, that you could barely hear it. And I think that part of the problem is that what we think of a whisper is that? So that it would be a question of figuring out in terms of what's going on. So it would still be with the concept of the open throat, wouldn't it? Yeah. But in the meantime, you people are free to do whatever you want on this. I mean, to experiment. But if you feel that one works, but also to experiment for yourself vocally. Because, again, that if you're going to be teaching this, the voice that you come to your students with is important also.
And the sun came out.
The sun came out for us, yes. I wanted to just sit for a minute. But I think that this went a long ways because people did go get into taking a chance on singing.
Let me just see what she was. She was going to change the focus of the class.
Let me ask the people who did this last year, that if you find this different this year than it was last year, when you did it.
Did you find it easier?
Maybe easier, or were you different?
Oh, different. I think the space is the space in here and the structure and the different parts and the different directions are much clearer this year for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
also the kinesthetic sense of heading back is much fuller.
Uh-huh. So that grows also.
Yeah, it was much more meaningful this time for me. I was able to understand your directions a little more and perhaps follow them a little more accurately.
Well, I think all of these things, because you understand a situation in terms of your own experience. And there were some quite daring sounds that were coming out here today. The idea is to be able to talk and move, so that if you want to experiment with that, and that would be a question of walking and maybe greeting somebody in the room. Hello, how are you? Or whatever. That it's so much a part of our lives. And also, and it's very interesting, that it grows out of the total use of the body. It's not separate. And within, let me say this again, within the lengthening and widening body, within the poise of the head, the lengthening spine, breathing, voice, speech happen to take place. They're within the body, they're not separate from whatever is going on. So that it's your total use that is involved. It's not that you isolate any one of these things. And you might have recognized that the more aware you were of your own totality, the better and the easier this worked for you. I think that's what Sam was saying, because he has this growing awareness of himself that much more, he was able to deal with much more. Anybody else have anything they'd like to comment on this?
I've never taken class with him, but apparently Andre Bernard, and he also is a radio announcer, he apparently has the most incredible voice. And he does a lot of idiokinesis, and apparently he's this macrobiotic, skinny man with this incredible voice that just comes.
What's idiokinesis?
It's work developed by Lucas Weigart. It's like image work to change your body structure.
I think one of the main, just to compare it to Alexander, a lot of the images are very similar to Alexander. The head off the top of the spine and lengthening and widening the back. And you do it in a constructive rest position, so it's doing it without moving through it. And but one of the big differences is they really emphasize the connection of the tail down and the tail connected to the heels and sliding, which to some extent is overdone, whereas in Alexander you have the torso up and they really emphasize lengthening the tail down. But all the other images are very similar. Knees away. Is that an image? For them, what they do in constructive rest is they think of the knees being hung on a hanger, and that hanger supporting the knees so that all of this lets go.
That is an image.
So that is an image, yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, images are very good. I think it's finding images that work forward. And I've discovered also that sometimes one has a total image of what one can see something totally, that it works better than the words, because the words you can only say sequentially, and the image is a total experience. So that it's whatever works for one, and there is no set way. So sometime you might just want to use words, another time you might want to use images. you might want to use them together, and sometimes you just might want to be with the kinesthetic. So that there are many ways of working at the Alexander technique. And what you want, it seems to me, is the objectivity of working with whatever works for you at a given moment. The only thing I'd say about images that they should be specific rather than poetic, because some people get into poetry when they think of the Alexander technique, and it seems to me that it's just words rather than something that can work. But again, it might be my own idiosyncrasy with this.
Well, it's interesting because I have conflicting responses to people's imagery. I mean, sometimes it just is wonderful and marvelous and puts a lot of things together and seems real appropriate in the moment.
Yes.
And, then other times, there's some kind of, there seems to be an emotional content within me that it rubs the wrong way and it doesn't work at all. It's flat and it's irritating.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really, you have to be careful, I would think.
Yeah.
You have to pick up real fast with your students what they're responding to.
Yes.
Because you don't want to hammer away at something they don't respond to. So it's real important to pick it up immediately.
Yeah.
And you'll know how to use words without, you don't have to think about it. Just pick it up from the student, whether they're responding or whether not.
And how they're responding, you know.
I think imagery could probably be useful to certain people as long as they can check the imagery with what they're doing in the mirror.
Yeah.
In other words, imagery sometimes can release a lot of emotions and feelings which might be contrary to what they're trying to do in the Alexander method.
Yes.
You might find that the imagery might cause your head to go back, something of that kind. So it's good to have the Alexander method to check on how efficient the imagery might be for you.
Yeah, and whether also it's freeing or constricting, that's what you're saying.
Yes.
Yes. What I would like to see in the next few minutes is you people maybe starting to speak and then move, or moving and then speaking, but dealing with the totality. And you can check your head out if you feel like it at the moment, though you can't walk down the street and talk and check your head out. I think funny things about you.
No funny than they think already.
Do you think maybe go one or two at a time or something? Or does that make people too nervous?
I think it makes them too self-conscious. Yeah.
Come on. I know it would make me self-conscious, but you're the class.
Well, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't bother me at the moment either, but I'm doing this so many years that...
Next, walk out the door.
So, I mean, try it. You see, you might try to pick up a chair and talk while you're picking up the chair, which is what you're doing when you're teaching. You're teaching and you're moving, you're teaching, you're talking, you're getting a person in and out of a chair. So experiment. Come on. Take a chance.
Away and release my feet. Think to withhold it over. Ankles free and the knees
I'm
forward.
putting it all together.
And see what the lunge is doing today. Arms hanging free, shoulder joints. That's just going to chair first time.
Yes.
Could you?
Could you?
Free in my hips.
You mean because the subject matter is sad? Well, because the subject matter is
So we don't.
That wasn't subject matter. What it was the way it was shot, the concentration of the depressingness of
But they chose to do Charlie Parker as a drug addict, and you know how he was obsessed with his drugs, but and then,
taking all our chairs.
yeah.
Now, with,
Leave your chair anywhere.
I would like us to dance a aura around this.
The only thing is that the force to fall back out into our
A aura. Or some kind of circle.
Yeah, it should balance the other way, so it doesn't fall.
I was bouncing
Just a very stark.
I kept trying.
How does that Now, what?
I think, all I think that, what I was saying, is that you can roll.
That was hard.
It's really, especially if you don't know the words or what.
Right.
You just.
Keep that real nice.
Is this the bride version?
It has been a build-up. It's including everything that we've done in the past few weeks also. Like bending, picking things up, dealing with movement, and just adding on another piece of it, which is,
Dancing.
yes. So anyway, does anybody have anything special they'd like to bring up now, after you've done all of that? So it really worked nicely.
You know what? I felt like the sound of my voice was different.
Yes.
Just occurred to me. I was talking to Jane, and I didn't. I mean, I knew I was talking, but the sound was so different to me.
Mm-hmm. What's happening is that with this expanding internal space, that concept, what you're doing is opening the resonators more. It's maybe one great big resonator, and it also does drop the voice. You get support. The breath support is in the lower back. That is right in the lower rib area. And
Could you say what you mean by the breath support? I'm not sure what you mean.
voice is breath. Without breath, you have no sound. But the support for that comes from the back. The fact that you are breathing into the lower back lobes of the lungs. If I were to narrow my back, I'd be pushing forward here. And I no longer have my breath to support me. I also have no voice. And I'd only breathe in the chest in front because that's not available. So that the support is in the wide back. So that you can get at the width, which is a very important aspect that we're dealing with, by dealing with the breath, dealing vocally, or separately just with the breath, or you can, by having the wide back, get at the voice or the breath. But the width is an integral part of what we're dealing with. Since you can't separate length from width, the width is a function of the length and the length is a function of the width, that what you are doing is lengthening and widening and supporting your breath or your voice. Does that answer it for you, or did I get into too much detail?
Just right.
But also, you can experiment with yourselves. You can narrow your back, deliberately, and see what happens to your voice and see what happens to your breath.
The thing I noticed just working a while ago, just on the ah,
Yes.
and just letting the ah come out is something I've really never done. But it was like I was standing back somewhere and I was still going. I mean, I was like, it's still going. I just kept going.
You had no idea that you had that much
There was
breath.
so much breath that I just was like standing there like this. Well, when's it going to end? You know, it was very unusual. Yeah, very unusual. And I did feel it down here because I had my hand here at the time, and I
Yes.
just kept feeling that movement. You know, it was decreasing as the air was leaving, but
Yes.
I noticed it.
Was it a pleasant surprise?
It was a very pleasant surprise. Yes.
Actually, my ears feel more open, like I hear more. I don't know whether that's because there was so much sound stimulation in this room.
Well, it's quiet.
Well, I heard some very nice sounds by the time we finished, particularly our little chorus over in that corner of the room. And
It was the Ant Hill Chorus you heard.
But I think that we do become aware of what's going on vocally. Also, you can begin to hear, and I hear a change vocally that I remind people. See if they can hear it, and they recognize that something has happened to them. That people aren't used to hearing themselves. That they don't listen to their voices ordinarily.
I was slow to say the thing that I was going to say before. And it's when I was talking to Shelley and even with Cynthia and other people standing here before, there was an artificial feeling about it. Or, you know, I jokingly went into cocktail party mode. But there was something else, even when I was doing the exercise and not messing around with cocktail party stuff. There was a kind of an artificial feeling, or not bad, not that it was false, but kind of a strange, maybe it's just self-consciousness.
It's not your voice.
But I felt far away from it in a strange way, but it sounded fine.
Mhm.
But it felt a little, I guess, self-conscious, artificial.
Well, also because it's not what you ordinarily think of as Jane speaking.
I mean, that's sort of like you stepped out of your, totally just inside your kinesthetic subjective space. You're in there, but you're also somewhere else. So that, it's divided, but it's still part of the same thing. Sometimes can be very odd.
But it's also being conscious. I mean, it's being conscious of things that you do so habitually you don't think about when you, talk. But all of a sudden, like everything is up for examination. It's like you have double vision.
So it's not only how you're going to bend to pick something up, but how you're going to sound when you talk. I mean, that Except that when you do a class like this and you notice suddenly from the beginning to the end of the class how your voice has changed. And you're not focusing on your voice, you're focusing on your students. But I know when it works with me, it's almost a sense of a great big hollow that's filled with my sound. Anybody else have anything?
I think it would be just the most wonderful byproduct of this work if my voice changes, because I just I'm not particularly keen on it. And I hadn't sort of thought of that as a possibility. So I think that's great.
You might get more than you bargained for.
Yeah.
Well, the other side effects that take place. Besides just getting your head on the end of the spine. Well, I have nothing else if you have nothing else.
When does this video come out in the stores?
Well, I haven't got all my releases signed yet, and I haven't talked to all the agents, so it might be a while.
We ought to put a date on this. All of this happened on November 29th, 1988.
East Coast.
That's the way it was.